Three-part tutorial. I'm going to show you some tips and tricks that I think will be beneficial for helping you draw a castle. Now, drawing the castle is your first task. So as we work our way through this, we're going to take a look at some of the tools that are offered in SKETCHUP for Schools, and we'll show you how to use them in an appropriate way to create a beautiful looking castle. So to start off, we have our drawing and editing tools down the left-hand side. And we have some more tools down the right-hand side that will change our environment and the way we look at our workspace. So for now, I just want to point out that most of the tools down the left-hand side, when you click on them, a variety of other tools will pop out of there, and you can choose whatever tool from that sub-menu you want. But be aware that whatever tool you choose stays on the main menu bar. So initially this might be a bit of an issue because you will not be able to find tools quickly, but once you become familiar with what tools are available under what toolbar, it really won't be much of a concern. Okay, so let's get started. So I have my character here on the screen, and the purpose of this character is to give you an idea of scale. And I want to draw a castle, so I'm going to start with a fairly large space. So I'm going to go down here. I'm going to rotate my character around a little bit, and then I'm going to zoom out. So I'll take my magnification tool, and I'm going to zoom back. There we go, sorry, up and down works better than side to side. And I'm going to go back to my pan tool and move my screen accordingly. Now, it's also fairly easy to take your orbit tool, and you can rotate the perspective of your image. So I'm going to zoom back just a little bit more. And pan over, and I'm going to start now drawing the space for my castle. So I'm going to start with a big simple square for my floor plan. And I want to make sure I am doing my square flat on the ground, so I'm going to want to see it show up in blue. Now you'll notice you have your axis here. This is your vertical or your y-axis. This is your horizontal x-axis. And this green one going back off into the distance is your z-axis. So they are your three-dimensional axis. And please note the color of those because that will come into play as we're working on this drawing. So I've created my basic floor plan for my castle just by drawing out a square. I'm going to rotate that a little bit again so I can see exactly what's going on. And now I want to utilize some tools to expand this floor plan. But the first thing I want to do is create an offset. Because I want to draw some walls on my castle, I'm going to come into this tool and choose offset. And when I do that and I hold along the edge of any shape, you'll see that it grabs that shape for me and it says on edge. So what I'm going to do is click and drag. I'm going to drag in set distance, and I'm not measuring this, I'm just looking at it and thinking that seems about right. And this will make sense once you start to see my castle take shape as to why I'm creating this second wall. But what I would like to do now, this is the exterior wall of my castle, and I want to put 4 turrets in the corner of each one of the corners of my castle. And I want those to be round. So I'm going to go back in, choose my circle tool, and I'm going to click right on the corner, and I'm going to start to draw across until my inferencing tool kicks in. So I'm going to click their end point and then just draw this line straight up, and it will snap there on my edge. So if you look closely there, you can see a green dotted line between my on edge point and this line right here. So that's one example of how you can use inferencing in SKETCHUP to line objects and other structures up with each other. I'm going to do that same trick on all of the corners. Start at the corner. I'm going to hold on to my edge and then draw my line straight down, and there it is. Now in order to continue with that, I'm going to use my pan tool just to move me over a little bit. Back to my circle tool. Click on the end point. And I want to come up here, and now that it knows what I'm doing, it's going to snap right there on edge, and see again that it shows me that's lined up with that center wall. And I'll do the same thing down here. There we go. So now I'm starting to see my castle take shape. So I'm going to again manipulate with my orbit tool, just spin it around a little bit. And I'm going to zoom out so I can see my castle a little more clearly. So now I'm going to take my eraser tool. And what I want to do is erase these lines right here that are connecting my circle turrets to the edge of my castle. So I'm just going to take my eraser tool and click and work across those 3 lines in each corner so that those are gone. Now my outside shape is one continuous shape all the way around, and that's what I want. So I'm going to go back to a tool I've just used, and that is my offset tool. And I'm going to offset both the inner and outer walls. So if I come to the outer wall, I'm going to go out there to a wall that's not too thick, but it is a castle, so it is designed for protection, so we want that to be something that would stop the enemies. And I'll do the same on my inside wall, and I want that to be roughly the same thickness. And again, I'm not going to measure this, I'm just going to go ahead and draw it and try and keep it roughly the same. So now that I have done that, I'm going to use the push-pull tool, and I'll find that under here, and the push-pull tool will allow me then to pull some of these 2-dimensional shapes into 3 dimensions. So I'm going to go to the outside wall first and lift it up. And again, looking at the size of my scale person here, I'm going to go maybe 3 or 4 times as tall as them because, again, it is a castle. And I will do the same with this inner wall. And I'm going to utilize another inferencing trick to make sure this one is the same height as the outside wall. So what I can do is simply move my cursor over until I touch on the top of the outside wall, and then the software knows then that I want that to be the same height, and I let go. So now this wall and this wall are the same height. Perfect, exactly what I want. Okay, I'm going to continue a little bit more here, and I'm going to add a few more features that are going to make our castle look a little bit more like a castle. So I'm going to draw a line. I'm going to rotate around here. And I'm going to draw a line just in here. From here to here. No, I'm going to undo that because I want that line to be perfectly straight. So I'm going to click in a little bit, and I'm going to go this way. Notice now that it's green. So that means it's lined up with this Z-axis. And I want that to be green, and I want it to connect right on the bottom corner of that wall. And I'll do the same thing over here. On edge, green, going all the way up. Please make sure you don't go off your axis or that won't work very well. So you're going to see what the purpose of those is in just a second. So I want my characters in my castle to be able to walk around the outside of the castle. And they're going to do that on a raised platform so we can defend this castle. So I'm going to spin my orbit tool around a little bit again, and I'm going to push-pull this whole floor part now. So notice now when I click on this, it highlights all the way around the floor, except for this piece that I've isolated in the middle. So I'm now going to lift this up so that my character's now walking around the top of my castle. We'll have a platform to walk on. And the last thing I'm going to do in this first part of the tutorial activity is draw a door so we can access our castle. So I'm going to go back to my front view. Now over here in our modified toolbar, if you click on scenes, you can jump right away to any particular view of your object. So that's a top view, there's an isometric view, there's a side view, different isometric view. There's an isometric view for each corner. There's your front, your left side, your right side, your back side, and your top. So these views are organized just as if you are looking at the object and looking at it from that perspective. So if I want to look at a front view, I click on my front view icon, and notice I'm right back to my front, looking at my person and the front of my castle. And I can hide that by clicking that arrow and it goes away. So what I want to do here now is draw with my square tool and my arc tool. I'm going to draw a door to allow my characters to enter my castle. So notice I'm letting it settle to on face. That means I've drawn that shape right on that front wall. I'm now going to use my arc tool and my inferencing tool again to draw some arcs on here. So there it clicks on midpoint, which is good. I move up a little bit. Now if I move enough, it's going to tell me it's exactly on a half circle. It doesn't need to be on a half circle for this purpose, so I'm going to go ahead and click there. I'm going to repeat that same process from end point. Well, I don't think I used midpoint in the last one. I'm going to back that up just a second and do that one again. So end point to midpoint, and then lift. And I'll do the same again from end point to there and lift. And again, I'm going to use my inferencing here. Hold on there. And notice that this now is the exact same height, which is what I want. And then I will go from end point there to end point right there, and I'll create another arc on top of that. So the reason for that was just to create a fairly fancy looking door, and I will take my eraser tool again and erase those points. Now you'll see my castle starts to have a door, but I want to get rid of the material here to make that door an actual doorway. So I'm going to rotate this a little bit so that I actually see the front and back of this wall, and that's important when I'm using push-pull, because when I take my push-pull tool now and I click on that surface, I want to push it back, and I want to click on the back of that wall. So what that's going to allow me to do is successfully take the material out of that push-pull area for my wall, and you'll notice now when I spin around, I can see right through my door. And I've got an opening there. Okay, so that's it for part 1. You can go ahead and click on part 2 and we'll pick up from where we left off.